Today we come to the next message from Christ in First Peter. Remember that Peter wrote two letters. The Apostle Peter, we read about in the Gospels. He wrote his first letter, obviously First Peter, and then the second letter known as Second Peter, some time later, but to the same group of Christians. But here we're looking at Christ. We're looking at how Jesus Christ is viewed or portrayed in First Peter, and this time the title is Christ, our victorious Lord. Of course, we're all familiar that Jesus died on the cross, but perhaps we don't know the rest, that Jesus was buried. He's buried in a cave. In those days, there was no graves in the ground. Where they put dead bodies was like a cave, and there was basically the hole in the cave, so to speak, and they would put the bodies inside and then roll a big stone over the front. Peter's already referred to this in chapter 3, verse 18. But in chapter 3, verse 22, we read, "Who has gone into heaven and is at God's right hand, with angels, authorities, and powers in submission to him." 1 Peter 3, the very last verse of that chapter, and verse 22. So here we see that Christ is our victorious Lord. Christ reigns in glory at God's right hand. All cosmic powers, that is, angelic powers, are under his rule. Quite an amazing thing, and we don't often think about that in the unseen world there are angelic beings, but they're all subject and submit to Christ. And this word, they're all in submission to him, is a word that means to place under in rank and authority. It's actually a military term, including complete submission and subjection. All angelic and spiritual beings are subject to Christ. And so here we see the triumph of Christ, as he not only went into death, as it mentions in the few verses before in chapter 3, but now he's alive from the dead. And it tells us where Jesus is. He is at God's right hand. That's the place of honor, of recognition, authority, and divine power. Christ shares the throne of God. This fulfills Psalm 110, verse 1. "Sit on my right hand till I make your enemies the footstool of your feet." And then we realize that Christ has gone into heaven. He ascended. We know that from the Gospels. Luke records his ascension, Acts chapter 1, and Mark 16 as well, last chapter of Mark. And there he is exalted in heaven. So that's where Christ is. Philippians chapter 2, verses 9 to 11 says, God has exalted him above, given him a name above every other name. And then it goes on to say, every knee will bow. Colossians 2 verse 15 says that Christ disarmed the powers and authority. This we see is that after Christ was risen from the dead, he ascended through the air, and that was the domain, if you like, that the angelic beings ruled. But here we see Christ's victory over spiritual beings is complete and final. And so Christ has gone into heaven. Christ ascended bodily and gloriously, and he shares divine rule and majesty. Here we see that Christ is victorious over evil. We can live in confidence and security, knowing that Christ is in control. We can fix our eyes on things above, Colossians 3 verse 1, and we can obey him as Lord of our lives. And something that's really encouraging is the fact that Christ is interceding at God's right hand, and so we are never forgotten or alone. Even if no one else remembers, we remember that Christ never forgets us. And so Christ's ascension is essential. His earthly work climaxes with his heavenly enthronement in heaven. Believers, Christians, need not fear demonic opposition because Christ rules over all. He reigns now, though we don't see it visibly, but one day every knee will bow to him and it will be seen visibly. And John Calvin said, "The ascension is the crown of Christ's redemptive work. He reigns not in theory but in truth over every power that would oppose his people." And so let's be encouraged as believers in Jesus Christ. His work is finished. His rule is absolute. We can live boldly knowing He's sovereign. We can trust and worship Him with full allegiance, knowing that He is the one that everything is subject to. So thank you for listening, and trust you've been encouraged.